The Varath Galactic Empire had ruled the stars for 12,000 years. Their territory stretched across 1,000 star systems. Their fleets numbered in the tens of thousands. Their word was law, and their power was absolute. No species had ever challenged them and survived. No civilization had ever risen to match their strength. The Varath believed they were the masters of the galaxy, and for 12 millennia, nothing had proven them wrong. Commander HFY stood on the bridge of his patrol cruiser, the Iron Dominion, and watched the stars drift past the viewing window. He had served the Empire for 60 years. He had fought in 3 border wars. He had crushed rebellions on a dozen worlds. Nothing surprised him anymore. The galaxy was predictable. The weak obeyed and the strong commanded. That was the natural order of things. His patrol fleet consisted of 12 warships. They guarded the outer edge of Vorath space near the Keldon Nebula, a region of swirling gas clouds and dead stars. Nothing of importance existed here. No valuable planets. No strategic positions. Just empty space and silence. It was a boring assignment, and HFY resented it. "Commander," his sensor officer called out, "we are detecting an unknown vessel entering our space." HFY turned from the window. "Unknown? Explain." "The ship's configuration does not match any species in our database. It is traveling at moderate speed on a direct course through the nebula." HFY frowned. Every spacefaring species in the galaxy was cataloged in the Imperial database. The Vorath had encountered them all. They had conquered most of them. An unknown ship should not exist. "Show me," he ordered. The main screen flickered to life. It displayed a vessel unlike anything HFY had seen before. It was large, perhaps half the size of his own cruiser, with a hull of dark gray metal. Its design was simple and functional. No decorations, no markings except for a small symbol on its side, a blue and green circle. "Can you identify the origin point?" HFY asked. The sensor officer worked his controls. "Tracing the ship's trajectory now, Commander. It appears to have originated from..." He paused. His face showed confusion. "From the Sol system." Silence fell across the bridge. Then someone laughed. It was Lieutenant Vorsun, the weapons officer. He was young and arrogant, like most young officers. "The Sol system?" Vorsun said. "That is the human homeworld, is it not? Those primitive creatures who can barely travel between their own planets?" HFY remembered the reports about humans. The Empire had discovered their world 40 years ago. A survey team had visited their system and found a species still using chemical rockets and basic fusion technology. They were classified as Tier 7, the lowest classification possible. A species so primitive they were not even worth conquering. The survey team had laughed at their radio signals and their tiny space stations. They had departed and never returned. Humans were a joke, a footnote in the Imperial archives. "It seems the primitives have learned to build ships," HFY said. "How amusing. Signal the fleet. We will intercept this vessel and educate its crew about the consequences of trespassing in Imperial space." The 12 Vorath warships changed course. They moved in perfect formation, their engines burning bright against the darkness. They were predators, and they had found prey. The human ship did not change course. It did not slow down. It did not speed up. It simply continued on its path, as if the approaching fleet did not exist. "They must not have detected us yet," Vorsun said. "Their sensors are probably as primitive as everything else they build." "Open a communication channel," HFY ordered. "Let us introduce ourselves." The communication officer activated the broadcast system. "Channel open, Commander." HFY stepped forward. "Attention, unknown vessel. This is Commander HFY of the Vorath Imperial Navy. You have entered sovereign territory without permission. You will halt your engines and prepare to be boarded. Any resistance will result in your immediate destruction. You have 30 seconds to comply." He waited. The bridge was quiet. Everyone watched the screen. 30 seconds passed. The human ship did not respond. It did not stop. It continued forward as if nothing had happened. "Perhaps they did not understand," the communication officer suggested. "Their language capabilities may be limited." "Then we will teach them with weapons," Vorsun said eagerly. "Commander, permission to fire a warning shot?" HFY considered it. The ship was clearly primitive. It posed no threat. but it had ignored a direct order from the Imperial Navy. Such disrespect could not be tolerated. "Granted," he said. "Fire one plasma burst across their bow. Let them know we are serious." Vorson grinned and activated the weapon system. A bolt of superheated plasma shot across space and passed directly in front of the human vessel. It was close enough to shake their ship, close enough to terrify any sane crew. The human ship did not react. It did not turn. It did not flee. It held its course, steady and unchanged. "They are either very brave or very stupid," Kethval muttered. "Bring us closer. Full sensor sweep. I want to know everything about that vessel." The Iron Dominion moved forward, its escort ship spreading out to surround the intruder. The sensor officer activated the deep scan system, a powerful tool that could penetrate any known hull material and reveal everything inside a ship. "Scanning now, Commander," the officer said. "Initial readings show..." "This cannot be correct." "What is it?" "The hull material. It is not registering properly. Our scanners are having difficulty penetrating it." The officer adjusted his controls, increasing power to maximum. The deep scan hummed with energy. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then the data began to flow across the screen. The sensor officer's face changed. His confidence disappeared. His hands began to tremble. "Commander," he said quietly, "you need to see this." Kethval walked to the sensor station and looked at the readings. At first, he did not understand what he was seeing. The numbers made no sense. They had to be errors, malfunctions in the equipment. But the equipment was functioning perfectly. The readings were accurate. The human ship's hull was made of a material that did not exist in any Imperial database. Its density was impossible. Its energy signature was beyond anything the Vorath had ever encountered. And inside the ship, where the engine should be, the sensors detected a power source that dwarfed the combined output of the entire patrol fleet. "This is impossible," Kethval whispered. "Humans are primitives. They cannot have this technology." "Commander," the communication officer interrupted, "we are receiving a transmission from the human vessel." Kethval's throat felt dry. "Put it through." The screen flickered. A human face appeared. It was a female, with dark hair and calm eyes. She wore a simple uniform with the same blue and green symbol on her shoulder. She looked at the camera with no fear, no anger, just patience. "Commander Kethval," she said. Her voice was clear, and her words were perfect Vorath. "My name is Captain Sarah Chen of the United Earth Navy vessel, Quiet Dawn. We apologize for not responding sooner. We wanted to give you time to complete your scans." Kethval stared at her. She spoke their language. She knew his name. She had allowed them to scan her ship. "You have entered Imperial space without authorization," he managed to say. "This is a violation of galactic law." Captain Chen smiled slightly. "We are aware of your laws, Commander. We have studied them carefully for many years. We are not here to violate them. We are here to deliver a message." "What message?" "That message is not for you. It is for your Emperor and your High Council. We are traveling to your capital world. We would prefer to do so peacefully." Vorson stepped forward, his face red with anger. "You dare threaten us? One ship against 12? We will destroy you where you stand." Captain Chen looked at him with something that might have been pity. "Lieutenant, I strongly advise against that course of action. We do not wish to harm anyone, but we will defend ourselves if necessary." "Fire all weapons!" Vorson shouted. "Destroy them!" "Belay that order!" Kethval commanded. But it was too late. Vorson had already activated the weapon system. Plasma cannons roared, missiles launched, energy beams cut through space. All 12 ships fired everything they had at the small human vessel. The human ship moved. Kethval had never seen anything move so fast. One moment it was there. The next moment it was somewhere else. The weapons fire passed through empty space and struck nothing. Then everything went dark. The lights on the Iron Dominion flickered and died. The engine stopped. The weapons went offline. Every system on the ship simply stopped working. Emergency lights came on, casting the bridge in a dim red glow. Kethval looked at his crew. They were frozen with shock. "Report," he said. "What happened?" The sensor officer checked his console with shaking hands. "All ships have lost power, Commander. All 12 vessels. We are completely disabled." "How? What did they do to us?" I do not know, sir. There was no weapon fire, no impact, no energy discharge. They just turned us off. On the screen, the human ship hung motionless in space. It was undamaged, untouched. Captain Chen's face appeared again. Commander Kethval, she said calmly, your ships will regain power in approximately 2 hours. Your crews are unharmed. Your vessels are undamaged. Please inform your superiors that humanity wishes to speak with them. We will be waiting at the border. The transmission ended. The human ship turned and glided away into the darkness of space. It moved with impossible grace, like a predator that had no need to hurry. Kethval watched it go. His hands were cold. His heart was pounding. In 60 years of service, he had never felt fear like this. Get a message to Imperial Command, he ordered quietly. Tell them everything. Tell them the humans are coming. The Iron Dominion drifted in silence, powerless and helpless, as the stars watched with ancient indifference. Somewhere in the darkness, humanity was waiting, and the Vorath Empire would never be the same. Admiral Vethkor had served the Vorath Empire for over a century. He had commanded fleets in 6 major wars. He had personally overseen the conquest of 32 worlds. He had never lost a battle, and he had never known defeat. The galaxy feared his name, and his enemies trembled at the sight of his flagship. But today, standing in the Great Hall of Imperial Command, he felt something he had not felt in decades: uncertainty. The message from Commander Kethval had arrived 3 hours ago. It was confused and fragmented, sent through emergency channels after the patrol fleet's main communication systems had failed. The content of that message had spread through the military hierarchy like wildfire. Now the highest officers of the Imperial Navy stood in stunned silence, waiting for answers that no one could provide. Play the recording again, Admiral Vethkor ordered. A holographic display flickered to life in the center of the hall. It showed the sensor data from the Iron Dominion, the strange ship, the impossible readings, the moment when 12 Vorath warships had been rendered completely powerless without a single shot being fired in return. The officers watched in silence. Some of them had seen it 5 times already. It did not become less disturbing with repetition. This must be a malfunction, said General Threlvis, commander of the 3rd Fleet. Sensor errors, equipment failures. The Border Patrol is using outdated technology. The equipment has been verified, Vethkor replied coldly. 3 separate technical teams have analyzed the data. The readings are accurate. Then explain them, Threlvis demanded. Humans are primitives. They were classified as Tier 7 40 years ago. They had barely achieved fusion power. They were launching chemical rockets. They could not have developed this technology in 4 decades. It is impossible. And yet, said a quiet voice from the shadows, the evidence suggests otherwise. Everyone turned. High Minister Zelthan stepped into the light. He was old, even by Vorath standards, and he had served as the head of Imperial Intelligence for longer than most officers had been alive. His face was calm, but his eyes held a deep concern that made Vethkor's stomach tighten. What do you know, Minister? Vethkor asked. Zelthan walked slowly to the holographic display. He touched a control, and the image changed. Now it showed the blue planet Earth, hanging in the blackness of space, surrounded by its single moon. 40 years ago, he began, our survey team visited the Sol system. They observed humanity for 3 days. They scanned their cities, their vehicles, their primitive spacecraft. They intercepted their communications and analyzed their technology. They concluded that humans were thousands of years behind us. Irrelevant, harmless. He touched another control. The image zoomed out, showing the entire solar system. They also left behind a spy drone, standard procedure for newly discovered species. The drone was programmed to observe and report every 5 years. I remember those reports, Threlvis said. Nothing significant. The humans continued their primitive development. They built a few more space stations. They sent probes to their outer planets. Nothing remarkable. Yes, Zelthan agreed. That is what the reports showed. But 3 days ago, we recovered the drone itself. It had stopped transmitting 2 years ago. We assumed it had malfunctioned. We sent a recovery ship to retrieve it. He paused. The silence in the hall was absolute. The drone was functional. Its transmission system had been disabled. Deliberately, someone had found it, studied it, and turned it off. But they left its recording system intact. The display changed again. Now it showed something that made every officer in the room stop breathing. Earth was still there. The moon was still there. But between them and around them, filling the space that had once been empty, were shipyards. Hundreds of shipyards. Massive structures of metal and light, each one larger than the greatest Vorth construction facility. And in those shipyards, taking shape with terrible patience, were warships, not dozens, not hundreds, thousands. The recording continued. Ships launched from the yards and moved into formation. They gathered in the darkness beyond the moon, invisible to any observer who did not know where to look. They waited there, silent and still, like predators preparing to hunt. "The humans found our drone 23 years ago," Zelton said quietly. "They did not destroy it. They did not send it back. They studied it. They learned our language from its communication logs. They learned our technology from its scanning systems. They learned our military doctrine from its tactical database. They used our own intelligence against us," Vethkor whispered. "More than that, they improved upon it. The hull material on that ship, our scientists have analyzed the data. It is based on a compound we developed 6,000 years ago, but abandoned because we could not perfect it. The humans found our research in the drone's archives and completed what we could not." General Threlvas looked like he might be sick. "How many ships? How many do they have?" "Based on the drone footage and our projections, humanity has constructed at least 8,000 warships in the past 4 decades. Each one is at least equal to our best vessels. Many are superior." 8,000? Threlvas' voice cracked. "The entire Imperial Navy numbers 12,000 ships. Half of those are patrol vessels and transports. Our core battle fleet is only 5,000 strong." "Yes," Zelton said. "The humans know this. They have studied our deployments. They have mapped our territories. They know exactly where our fleets are positioned and exactly how long it would take them to respond to an attack." Admiral Vethkor felt the ground shift beneath his feet. Everything he believed about the galaxy was crumbling. The natural order, the strong ruling the weak, the advanced dominating the primitive, was a lie. Humanity had been weak once. They were not weak anymore. "Why?" he asked. "Why did they build all of this? Why did they hide?" "Because they remembered us," Zelton replied. "They remembered how our survey team looked at them, with contempt, with dismissal. They remembered how we laughed at their achievements and departed without a word of respect. They decided that they would never be looked at that way again." A communication officer rushed into the hall. His face was pale with urgency. "Admiral, we have received a transmission from the human vessel at the border." "Put it through." The holographic display shifted once more. A human face appeared. The same woman from Kethval's recording, Captain Sarah Chen. She looked at the assembled officers with calm, measured eyes. "Greetings," she said. "My name is Ambassador Sarah Chen, representing the United Earth Confederacy. I have been authorized to speak on behalf of humanity." Ambassador. She had called herself Captain before. Vethkor understood immediately. The military rank was a disguise. She was a diplomat. This was not an invasion. It was a negotiation. "We are aware that our appearance has caused concern," Chen continued. "This was not our intention. We did not come to threaten you. We did not come to make demands. We came to talk." "Talk about what?" Vethkor demanded. "About the future, about peace, about the possibility of cooperation between our species." She paused. "And about something else, something that threatens us both. But that conversation is not for military channels. We request a meeting with your Emperor and your High Council. We will wait at the border coordinates for your response." The transmission ended. The officers stood in shocked silence. General Threlvas was the first to speak. "It is a trick. They want us to lower our guard. They are planning an attack." "With what purpose?" Zelton asked. "They already have the advantage. If they wanted to attack, they would not need tricks. They could simply advance." "Then what do they want?" "Perhaps exactly what they said. To talk." Admiral Vethkor stared at the empty display where Chen's face had been. She had shown no arrogance, no threats, no demands. just patience and calm. It was more frightening than any act of aggression. "We must inform the Emperor," he said finally. "This decision is beyond our authority." He turned and walked toward the doors. The other officers followed. Behind them, the holographic display still showed the frozen image of Earth's shipyards. Thousands of warships waiting in the darkness, built by a species the Empire had dismissed as primitive. Vethker had spent his entire life believing that power came from strength, from weapons, from the ability to destroy. But as he walked through the ancient halls of Imperial Command, he wondered if he had been wrong. The humans had power beyond anything he had imagined, and yet they were asking to talk. What kind of species builds an unstoppable fleet and then asks for peace? The question haunted him as he prepared to face his emperor, and somewhere in the back of his mind, a small voice whispered that maybe, just maybe, the humans knew something the Vorith did not. Something important. Something that changed everything. The doors closed behind him. The hall fell silent, and across the vast distance of space, humanity waited with infinite patience for an answer. The Imperial Council chamber had not seen such chaos in 3,000 years. The highest leaders of the Vorith Empire sat in their ancient seats, shouting over each other like common merchants in a marketplace. Fear had stripped away their dignity. Panic had destroyed their composure. The natural order of the galaxy was collapsing, and no one knew how to stop it. Emperor Vorith sat upon his throne and watched his council tear itself apart. He was old now, his scales faded to pale gray, but his mind remained sharp. He had ruled for 200 years. He had seen wars and plagues and rebellions. He had always found a way to preserve the empire. But this was something new. This was something that frightened him in ways he could not name. "We must strike now!" Grand Marshal Kethron slammed his fist on the table. "Every hour we delay, the humans grow stronger. We must gather our full fleet and crush them before they can advance." "With what forces?" Admiral Vethkor demanded. "We have 5,000 warships capable of frontline combat. They have 8,000, possibly more, and their technology is superior to ours. We saw what one ship did to 12 of ours." "One ship?" "Then we use our numbers," Kethron insisted. "We attack from multiple directions. We overwhelm their defenses. You would sacrifice half the fleet in a battle we cannot win?" High Minister Zelthan interrupted coldly. "The humans are not fools. They have studied our tactics. They know every strategy we have ever used. They will anticipate our moves before we make them. So what do you suggest? Surrender? Bow to these primitives?" "They are not primitives." The voice came from the back of the chamber. Everyone turned to see Scholar Yeltha, the oldest member of the Academy of Sciences, rising slowly from her seat. She was frail and thin, but her eyes burned with fierce intelligence. "They never were. We simply refused to see them." She walked forward, her footsteps echoing in the sudden silence. "I have spent the last 2 days analyzing every piece of data we have on humanity, their history, their development, their culture, and I have reached a conclusion that disturbs me greatly." "Speak," the Emperor commanded. Yeltha bowed her head briefly. 40 years ago, when we discovered Earth, we saw a species at war with itself, divided into competing nations, fighting over resources and ideologies. We saw their pollution and their violence and their primitive technology. We judged them weak because they had not unified. We judged them primitive because they had not conquered their neighbors. We applied our own standards to a species that did not share them. "What standards should we have applied?" Kethron sneered. "Perhaps patience," Yeltha replied. "Perhaps the recognition that a species can be dangerous not because of what it has, but because of what it can become." She touched a control on the central display. Images appeared, old photographs and video recordings from Earth. Wars, devastation, cities in ruins, millions dead. "Humanity has fought more wars among themselves than we have fought in 12,000 years, she continued. They have experienced genocide, nuclear destruction, environmental collapse. They have stood at the edge of extinction multiple times, always by their own hand. And yet they survived. Each time they rebuilt. Each time they learned. Each time they became stronger." The images changed. Now they showed something different. Cities being reconstructed, enemies shaking hands, former soldiers working side by side, monuments being built not to victory, but to reconciliation. They remember their failures, Yelta said softly. They remember every war, every atrocity, every mistake. They teach their children about the darkness in their past so that the next generation might choose a different path. When our survey team visited them 40 years ago, they were in the midst of their greatest transformation. They were learning for the first time in their history to be united. United against us, Kethron growled. Perhaps, or perhaps united despite us. Yeltha looked directly at the Emperor. They could have attacked at any time in the past decade. They had the ships, they had the technology, they had the element of surprise. Instead, they waited. They sent one vessel alone to deliver a message. They disabled our patrol fleet without causing a single death. They asked to talk. She paused, letting her words sink in. These are not the actions of conquerors, Your Majesty. These are the actions of a species that has learned the cost of war and no longer wishes to pay it. The chamber fell silent. The Emperor sat motionless on his throne, his ancient eyes fixed on the images still floating in the air. Humanity's history of violence and redemption, destruction and rebirth. You believe they genuinely want peace? He asked. I believe they want something, Yeltha replied. What that something is, I cannot say. But I believe it is worth hearing them out before we condemn our empire to a war we may not survive. Grand Marshal Kethron stood abruptly. This is madness. The empire has never negotiated with inferior species. We have never shown weakness. If we talk to the humans, every client race in our territory will see it as an invitation to rebel. If we fight the humans and lose, we will have no territory left to worry about, Selthan observed quietly. The argument erupted again. Voices rose and fell. Accusations flew. The fear in the room was palpable, thick enough to choke on. And then a new voice cut through the noise. Enough! Everyone stopped. A communication officer stood at the entrance to the chamber, his face white as bone. What is it? The Emperor demanded. The human vessel, Your Majesty. It has moved. It is now holding position at the edge of our core territory, and it is not alone. He touched a control. The central display flickered and changed. Now it showed a tactical map of the border region, and what appeared on that map made every heart in the chamber stop. The single human ship had been joined by others. Not dozens, not hundreds, thousands. An entire fleet had materialized out of nowhere, stretching across the border like a wall of silent steel. 8,000 warships, perfectly aligned, waiting with terrible patience. They jumped, Vethkor whispered. They have faster-than-light technology we cannot detect. They moved their entire fleet without us seeing. And yet they hold position, Yeltha noted. They do not advance. They do not attack. They simply wait. As if on cue, a transmission came through. The display shifted to show Ambassador Sarah Chen. She stood on the bridge of her ship, the same calm expression on her face. Behind her, through a viewport, the human fleet was visible, an endless sea of warships, their hulls dark against the stars. Your Majesty, she said, bowing her head slightly, I apologize for the dramatic display. My government felt it was necessary to demonstrate the seriousness of our request. We have no desire to use this fleet. We have no desire for war, but we needed you to understand that we come to you as equals, not as supplicants. She straightened and looked directly at the Emperor. We ask again for a meeting, not to demand, not to threaten, simply to talk. I will come to your border station alone, with no weapons and no guards. I will place myself entirely in your power as a gesture of good faith. Why? The Emperor asked. You have the advantage. You could destroy us. Why do you seek peace? Ambassador Chen's expression changed slightly. Something flickered in her eyes. Sadness, perhaps, or regret. Because we have destroyed before, she said quietly. We have burned cities and slaughtered millions of our own kind. We have waged wars that accomplished nothing except suffering. We learned eventually that there is no glory in conquest, no honor in destruction, only ashes and graves and the endless weight of regret. She paused, and when she spoke again, her voice was firm. We did not build this fleet to conquer you. We built it to ensure that no one would ever look at us with contempt again. We built it so that when we asked for peace, we would be heard. We came here not to start a war, Your Majesty. We came to end one before it begins. The transmission ended. The chamber was silent. 8,000 human warships hung in space, waiting for an answer. Emperor Vorath of Tino looked at his council, at the fear on their faces, the uncertainty in their eyes. He thought about 12,000 years of empire, 12,000 years of conquest and domination, 12,000 years of believing that strength meant the ability to destroy, and he thought about a species that had learned, through unimaginable suffering, that true strength was the ability to choose peace. "Send word to the border station," he said finally. "Tell the human ambassador that I will meet with her personally, and tell our fleet to stand down. For now." The council erupted in protest, but the emperor raised his hand for silence. "I am old," he said quietly. "I have ruled for 2 centuries. I have seen what war does to civilizations. If there is a chance, any chance, that we can avoid that fate, I will take it. Prepare the meeting." He rose from his throne and walked toward the door. Behind him, his empire trembled on the edge of transformation. And somewhere in the darkness of space, humanity waited with open hands and patient hearts. The Imperial border station floated in the emptiness between stars. It was a massive structure, built 3,000 years ago as a symbol of Vorath power. Its weapons platforms could destroy entire fleets. Its shields could withstand bombardment for months. It had never been attacked because no species had ever been foolish enough to try. Now that mighty fortress stood in the shadow of the human fleet. 8,000 warships hung in perfect formation, their dark hulls absorbing the light of distant suns. They had not moved since their arrival. They had not threatened. They had not demanded. They simply waited, patient and silent, like a storm that chose not to fall. Admiral Vethkor stood on the observation deck and watched the human fleet through the reinforced windows. Behind him, 2,000 Vorath warships had gathered, every vessel that could be spared from the core territories. They were the finest ships in the Imperial Navy, crewed by the best officers, armed with the most powerful weapons. They looked like children's toys compared to what floated beyond them. "The Emperor's shuttle is departing," his aide announced. "He will arrive at the neutral meeting zone in 20 minutes. Vethkor nodded but did not turn from the window. He could not stop staring at the human ships. Their design was elegant in its simplicity. No decorations, no unnecessary features. Every line and angle served a purpose. They were weapons made flesh, built by a species that understood war in a way the Vorath had never needed to learn. "Admiral," his aide said quietly, "there is something you should see." He turned. The aide held a data tablet showing sensor readings. Vethkor took it and felt his blood run cold. "These readings are from the human flagship," the aide explained. "The ship called the Patient Hand. Our sensors finally managed to penetrate its outer hull." The numbers on the screen were impossible. The ship's power core was generating more energy than the station's entire reactor complex. Its weapon systems were unlike anything in the Imperial database. And its shields, if the readings were accurate, could withstand a direct hit from the station's main cannon without flickering. "One ship," Vethkor whispered. "One ship could destroy this entire station." "Yes, Admiral. And they have 8,000 of them." Vethkor handed back the tablet. His hands were steady, but inside something fundamental had broken. He had spent his entire life believing in the supremacy of the Vorath Empire. That belief was dying now, one impossible sensor reading at a time. In the neutral zone between the two fleets, 2 shuttles approached each other. One was Vorath, a ceremonial vessel carrying Emperor Vorath and his honor guard. The other was human, a simple transport with no visible weapons. It carried only Ambassador Sarah Chen. The shuttles docked at a small neutral platform that had been constructed for this meeting. The Emperor emerged first, surrounded by 20 of his finest soldiers. He wore the ancient armor of his ancestors, gold and crimson, heavy with the weight of 12,000 years. Ambassador Chen emerged alone. She wore a simple gray uniform, no medals, no decorations, no weapons. She walked toward the Emperor without fear, her steps measured and calm. She stopped at the appropriate distance and bowed her head. "Your Majesty," she said, "thank you for agreeing to meet." The Emperor studied her. She was small compared to a Voroth, shorter, more fragile. Her lifespan was probably less than a tenth of his, and yet she stood before him without trembling. She looked at him not as a subject looks at a master, but as an equal addressing another equal. "You have caused quite a disruption, Ambassador," he said. "My empire has not known fear like this in 3,000 years. "That was not our intention, Your Majesty. Fear makes poor decisions. We wanted to speak with you clearly, without the distortion that fear brings. And yet you brought 8,000 warships to emphasize your point. We brought 8,000 warships because without them, you would not have listened." She met his eyes steadily. "When your survey team visited Earth 40 years ago, they laughed at us. They saw us as primitives. They departed without offering contact, trade, or diplomacy. They dismissed us as beneath their notice." The Emperor was silent. He remembered approving that mission report. He remembered the contemptuous tone of the survey team's conclusions. He had not thought about humanity since. "We understood the message," Chen continued. "We understood that in your galaxy, the weak are ignored and the strong are respected. We understood that if we wanted to be heard, we would need to earn your attention. So we built, we researched, we prepared, and now here we are, ready to speak as equals." Grand Marshal Ketheron, who had insisted on accompanying the Emperor, stepped forward aggressively. "Equality is earned through millennia of civilization. You have existed as a spacefaring species for mere decades. You demand equality based solely on military power." "No," Chen replied calmly. "We demonstrate capability to ensure our words carry weight. What we ask for is not equality, it is understanding." She turned back to the Emperor. "Your Majesty, I am authorized to make a request. It may seem strange after everything you have seen. We ask only that you observe, that you watch what our fleet is capable of, and then that you listen to what we have to say." "Observe what exactly?" "A demonstration. With your permission, I will signal our fleet to fire upon your station." The honor guard raised their weapons immediately. Ketheron drew his ceremonial blade, but the Emperor held up his hand. "You want to attack our station? To prove what? That you can destroy us?" "No, Your Majesty. To prove that we choose not to." Something in her voice made him pause. There was no threat there, no triumph, only a quiet sadness that he could not quite understand. "Proceed," he said. Chen touched a small device on her wrist. "All ships, execute pattern 7, single volley only." On the observation deck of the border station, Admiral Vethkor watched the human fleet come alive. 8,000 ships moved simultaneously, their weapon systems powering up with a sound that traveled through space itself, a deep hum that resonated in his bones. "All hands, brace for impact," he shouted. "Raise shields to maximum." The human fleet fired. 8,000 ships released their weapons in perfect synchronization. Beams of light that made stars look dim. Projectiles that moved faster than thought. Energy that could crack worlds. The station's shields absorbed the first wave, then the second, then nothing. The bombardment stopped. The station was still there. Its shields were intact. Its hull was undamaged. Every system was functional. Vethkor stared at his displays in disbelief. "They missed? All of them?" "No, Admiral." His sensor officer's voice was barely a whisper. "They hit us. Every shot hit us. Their weapons were set to exactly the intensity our shields could absorb. They calculated our defensive capabilities and matched their attack perfectly. They hit us with everything they had, and they tuned it precisely to cause no damage." The implications crashed over Vethkor like a wave. The humans had not missed. They had not failed. They had demonstrated absolute precision. They had shown that they could touch the station without destroying it. They could calibrate their weapons to the exact joule. They could choose with perfect accuracy what lived and what died. And they had chosen mercy. Back on the platform, Ambassador Chen watched the Emperor's face as the reports came through his communication device. She saw the moment he understood. She saw the fear transform into something else, something closer to awe. "If we had wanted to destroy you," she said quietly, "you would already be gone. Your station, your fleet, your empire. We have the power to end it all. We calculated the scenarios. We ran the simulations. We know exactly how this war would unfold if we chose to fight it. She stepped closer to him, her voice softening. We spent 40 years building the capacity for absolute destruction, and then we spent 40 years learning how not to use it. Because we have been destroyers before, Your Majesty. We have burned our own world. We have slaughtered our own people. We know what victory tastes like, and it tastes like ash. She reached out and gently touched his arm, a gesture of intimacy that would have been unthinkable between their species moments ago. We came here with the power to conquer you. Instead, we offer you something we have never offered anyone, a choice, cooperation or conflict, partnership or war. We will accept whatever you decide, but we wanted you to understand that when we speak of peace, we speak from strength. We are not begging, we are offering. The Emperor stood in silence. Behind him, his honor guard remained frozen, weapons still raised. Grand Marshal Kethron looked like he might explode with rage. But the Emperor had lived for 300 years. He had seen the rise and fall of civilizations. He had learned to recognize truth when he heard it. Why? He asked finally. You have everything. You have power beyond imagining. Why do you want peace with us? Ambassador Chen smiled sadly. Because power is not everything, Your Majesty. We learned that lesson the hard way. We learned it in the ruins of our cities and the graves of our children. We learned it through centuries of suffering and loss. She looked at him with eyes that held the weight of human history. Every war, every genocide, every moment of darkness, and every struggle toward light. We do not want to rule the galaxy. We want to live in it. And there is something coming, something from beyond our borders that threatens us all. But that conversation is for another moment. For now, I ask only this. Will you listen? The Emperor looked at her for a long moment. Then he turned to his guard. Lower your weapons, he commanded, and contact the council. Tell them I am returning to the capital. The ambassador will accompany me. He looked back at Chen. It seems we have much to discuss, Ambassador. I hope, for both our sakes, that you are what you claim to be. So do we, Your Majesty, she replied. So do we. And together they walked toward the shuttle that would carry them to the heart of the Vorith Empire. Two species, separated by physiology and history, united by something that neither had expected. Hope. The Imperial throne room was the most sacred place in Vorith civilization. Its walls were carved from stone that had been brought from their original homeworld, now lost to time and distance. Its ceiling rose so high that it disappeared into shadow. Its floor was marked with the names of every emperor who had ruled across 12,000 years of history. Ambassador Sarah Chen walked through those ancient halls with Emperor Varath at her side. Behind them, the entire Imperial Council followed in stunned silence. Ahead of them, the throne waited, that massive seat of power where every major decision in Varath history had been made. The Emperor had insisted on this meeting. He wanted his council to hear what the human had to say. He wanted them to understand what he was beginning to understand himself. Chen stood before the throne and faced the assembled lords and ministers of the galaxy's greatest empire. She was alone. She had refused all guards and all protection. She stood in the heart of Vorath power with nothing but her words. You wanted to know why we seek peace, and she began. You wanted to know why a species with the power to conquer would choose not to. I will tell you, but first I need to tell you about Earth. She touched a device on her wrist. A holographic display appeared above her, images of a blue and green world, beautiful and fragile against the blackness of space. 300 years ago, humanity nearly destroyed itself. We built weapons that could crack the planet. We built armies that stretched across continents. We divided ourselves into nations and ideologies and convinced ourselves that our differences were worth dying for. The images changed. Cities in flames, mushroom clouds rising over landscapes, bodies in the streets. We waged wars that killed hundreds of millions. We poisoned our air and water and land. We came within hours of ending our entire civilization. And for what? Pride, fear, the conviction that our way of life was the only correct way. The council watched in silence. They had heard the reports about human violence, but seeing it displayed so starkly was different. These were not abstractions. These were real events, real deaths, real consequences. And then we stopped, Chen said quietly. Not because we became wise or enlightened. We stopped because we stood in the ashes of what we had done, and we felt the weight of it. We looked at the graves of our children and we asked ourselves if any cause, any ideology, any piece of land was worth that price. She paused, letting her words settle. The answer was no. And so we began to change. It took generations. It took sacrifice and compromise, and the hardest thing of all, forgiveness. We had to forgive our enemies for what they had done to us. We had to forgive ourselves for what we had done to them. We had to build something new from the wreckage of something old. She looked directly at the Emperor. When your survey team found us 40 years ago, we were in the middle of that transformation. We were not primitive, Your Majesty. We were recovering, healing, growing. And when we saw how your people looked at us, with contempt, with dismissal, we understood something important. She straightened her shoulders, her voice gaining strength. We understood that the galaxy was ruled by the same laws we had nearly destroyed ourselves to escape. The strong dominated the weak, the powerful took what they wanted. Violence was the currency of respect. We looked at your empire and we saw our own past reflected back at us, the past we had fought so hard to leave behind. Grand Marshal Catharon stepped forward aggressively. You insult us. The Vorath Empire has brought order to 1,000 worlds. We have ended wars. We have created stability. Yes, Chen agreed. Through force, through conquest, through making others fear you too much to resist. That is one way to create peace. But it is not the only way. And it is not a peace that can last. She turned to face him directly. Your client species do not obey you because they respect you. They obey because they are afraid. The moment you show weakness, they will rise against you. The moment a greater power appears, your empire will fracture. You have built your civilization on fear, and fear is a foundation that always crumbles. Catherine's hand moved toward his weapon, but the Emperor's voice stopped him. Let her speak, Marshal. I would hear her out. Chen bowed her head gratefully. Thank you, Your Majesty. I say these things not to mock you, but to warn you, because there is something coming that fear alone will not stop. She changed the holographic display. Now it showed something else, a map of the galaxy, with a dark shadow spreading from one edge. Our astronomers detected it 30 years ago. We call it the Hollow. It is a wave of destruction moving toward this galaxy from the void between stars. We do not know what it is, a natural phenomenon, an ancient weapon, an alien force beyond our comprehension. We know only that it is coming, and that it will arrive in approximately 200 years, the Council muttered nervously. 200 years was nothing to a civilization that had existed for 12,000. Our scientists have run projections, Chen continued. If the Hollow reaches us while the galaxy remains divided, the outcome is clear. Individual civilizations will be destroyed one by one. Even your empire with all its power will fall. Even humanity with all our technology will fall. Separately, we are not enough. She let that sink in. But together there is a chance. Our combined resources, our combined knowledge, our combined strength. Together we might survive what is coming. That is why we built our fleet, Your Majesty. Not to conquer you, not to dominate you, to ensure that when we offered partnership, you would take us seriously. The Emperor rose slowly from his throne. He walked down the steps until he stood directly before the human ambassador. She was so small compared to him, so fragile, and yet she did not flinch. You ask us to trust you, he said, to believe that a species we have never known intends only cooperation, to accept that this threat is real and that alliance is the answer. I ask you to consider it, Chen replied, to investigate our claims, to verify our data, and then to decide for yourselves. We do not require an immediate answer. We have waited 40 years already. We can wait longer. And if we refuse, if we decide that the Empire will stand alone, Chen's expression did not change, then we will defend ourselves if attacked, and we will prepare for the Hollow on our own. We will not force cooperation upon you. That would make us no different from the conquerors we refuse to become. She took a breath and continued. But I hope you will not refuse. I hope that when you look at what we have done, building a fleet for defense, demonstrating our power without destruction, coming to you with open hands instead of clenched fists, you will see something worth believing in. We are offering you something the galaxy has never seen, Your Majesty. A partnership between equals. A future built on cooperation instead of conquest. The throne room was silent. Every eye was fixed on the Emperor. His decision would shape the fate of civilizations. He thought about 12,000 years of empire. He thought about the countless species his ancestors had conquered, the worlds they had claimed, the power they had accumulated. He thought about the foundation of fear that Chen had described, and he recognized the truth in her words. He had seen how quickly loyalty evaporated when strength faltered. And he thought about the hollow, that shadow spreading across the stars, coming to devour everything they had built. I have ruled for 200 years, he said finally. I have made decisions that shape the lives of trillions. But I have never faced a choice like this. He turned to face his council. We have two paths before us. We can cling to the old ways, domination, fear, isolation. We can pretend that nothing has changed and pray that the humans and the hollow both pass us by. Or we can take a risk. We can trust that these humans are what they claim to be. We can build something new. He looked back at Chen. I choose the second path. I choose alliance. Not because I fully trust you, I do not, but because I have seen what you can do, and you chose not to do it. That choice, that restraint, that is something I have not seen in 12,000 years of galactic politics. It is something worth exploring. He extended his hand in the human gesture of greeting, something his advisors had taught him in preparation for this meeting. Welcome to the Vorith Empire, Ambassador. Let us build something better together. Chen took his hand. Her grip was warm and firm. Thank you, Your Majesty. I promise you will not regret this. 1 year later, the galaxy had changed beyond recognition. Human and Vorith ships trained together in joint exercises. Scientists from both species shared research and technology. The client species of the Empire, once ruled by fear, were offered new terms: partnership instead of subjugation, cooperation instead of obedience. Some chose to remain, others chose independence, and for the first time in 12,000 years, no one was punished for that choice. The patient hand led a joint fleet through the outer territories, patrolling the border against pirates and preparing the defenses against the coming hollow. Its human captain, James Chen, Sarah's nephew, stood on the bridge and watched the stars drift past. Beside him, a Vorith officer named Vethkor the Younger studied tactical displays. He was the son of the admiral who had first witnessed the human fleet's arrival. He had grown up hearing stories about that day, about fear and surprise and the impossible choice that had followed. Do you think we can stop it? Vethkor asked. The hollow, I mean. Do you think we are strong enough? Captain Chen considered the question. I don't know, he admitted. No one does. But I know this. A year ago, our species were ready to destroy each other. Now we are standing together, facing the darkness as allies. Whatever happens, that is already a victory. He looked out at the fleet surrounding them, Vorith and human ships flying in formation, their crews working as one. My aunt used to say that humanity's greatest weapon was not our technology or our ships. It was our ability to change, to look at our worst impulses and choose something different. Maybe that is what will save us. Not the weapons we have built, but the choice we have made to use them in defense instead of conquest. Vethkor nodded slowly. Your species is strange, human. You have the power to dominate, and you choose cooperation. You have the strength to destroy, and you choose mercy. I do not fully understand it. Captain Chen smiled. Neither do we sometimes, but we keep trying. That is all any of us can do. The fleet moved forward into the darkness, leaving trails of light against the infinite black. Behind them, 1,000 worlds watched with hope and fear. Ahead of them, the unknown waited, but they were not alone anymore. Human and Vorith standing together. Former enemies become allies. Two civilizations, scarred by their own histories, reaching toward a future neither could achieve alone. And somewhere in the deep void between galaxies, the hollow continued its endless approach. It did not know fear. It did not know mercy. It knew only consumption and darkness. But for the first time in billions of years, something stood in its path. Something that had learned to turn weapons into shields and enemies into friends. Something that had chosen, against all instinct and history, to believe in the possibility of peace. Humanity had arrived, and nothing would ever be the same.